Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at Mose Gibson,
Mose Gibson.
an alleged American serial killer from the early 1900s.
Okay.
The sources we have for you today are excerpts from a Wikipedia article,
All right.
which details a pretty wild story, and trust me, this one has more twists and turns than a backwoods dirt road.
Intriguing. I'm ready to hear more.
So Gibson claimed to have committed a string of murders,
Uh,
but some folks believe his confession was a complete fabrication,
okay.
and he was actually wrongfully convicted.
Oh, wow.
It's a real true crime mystery.
Yeah.
And by the end of this deep dive, you'll have all the facts, the inconsistencies, and
Yeah.
everything in between so you can form your own opinion.
Right.
Let's start with his early life, shall we?
It's always fascinating to see how someone's early experiences might have shaped their path.
Right. And in Gibson's case, the details are a little murky.
Okay.
We know he was born in Louisiana in 1883.
Hmm.
And the first official record we have of him pops up in 1904. He's imprisoned in Baton Rouge for some unknown offense.
That lack of clarity about his first offense is interesting, don't you think? There's a lot of room for speculation.
Absolutely. Now, Gibson himself claimed he was sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Right.
And being surrounded by hardened criminals for years essentially turned him into one.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Yeah.
But there's another side to this coin.
Oh, there is.
A former district attorney who knew Gibson had a completely different take.
Okay.
He described Gibson as a decent, hardworking farmhand who got caught up in a bad situation, accused of shooting at a man.
Oh, wow.
The attorney even defended him in court, but Gibson was still found guilty and ended up in the Louisiana State Penitentiary.
So from the very beginning, we have two completely contrasting narratives about who this guy really was.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does, and it speaks to how easily narratives can be shaped, especially when dealing with individuals on the fringes of society.
After serving his time, Gibson left Louisiana and, well, let's just say he switched careers.
Yeah.
He allegedly embarked on a decade-long spree of burglaries and robberies,
Wow.
supposedly committing thousands of them.
Thousands.
Thousands? Can you even wrap your head around that?
It's certainly a staggering number.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is whether these alleged crimes show a pattern, a modus operandi, that might shed light on his methods and motivations.
It's like he had a real knack for it. There's this wild story from his time in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
He was arrested after a burglary, but managed to escape, still wearing handcuffs.
He escaped.
And then he committed another burglary just so he could get the handcuffs removed.
What?
I mean, the audacity of this guy is incredible.
His resourcefulness, if we can call it that, is certainly evident.
Right.
But that escape and subsequent burglary also raise questions.
Yeah.
Was it purely about the money to remove the cuffs, or was there something more driving him a need to prove his skill, perhaps?
Let's talk about adding another layer of intrigue. But we can't just focus on his escapades as a thief. Things take a much darker turn.
Okay.
We need to talk about the murders.
Yes, the alleged murders. This is where the stakes become significantly higher.
Right.
And the need to examine the evidence even more critical.
Exactly. Gibson confessed to a total of 10 murders,
10 murders.
though later accounts usually mention 7.
Okay.
And these murders span a huge geographical area, Louisiana to Florida,
Wow.
Arizona, even all the way to California.
Wow.
His victims were pretty diverse, too.
Okay.
From restaurateurs to elderly couples and ranchers.
That wide range of victims and locations adds complexity to the picture.
Yeah.
Did his alleged methods change from state to state?
Right.
Was there any consistency in his choice of victims?
It almost seems random, like he was constantly on the move,
Right.
leaving a trail of tragedy behind him.
Yeah.
A few specific cases really highlight the chilling nature of his alleged crimes, and there's a lot of debate surrounding them.
Let's delve into those cases. The details, especially any inconsistencies, might be crucial to understanding the bigger picture.
First, there's the murder of J.R. Riggett, a restaurateur in Louisiana back in 1908. This was supposedly Gibson's first known victim.
Okay.
And there's a really interesting detail. Another man was initially suspected of the crime.
Oh, wow.
It makes you question if maybe Gibson was involved all along or if it was just a coincidence.
A case of mistaken identity is always a possibility, especially in the early 1900s when forensic science was in its infancy.
Right?
It would be fascinating to look at what evidence, if any,
Yeah.
connected Gibson to this crime initially.
Oh, that's a good point. Then there's the double murder of the Earhart couple in Arizona in 1920.
Okay.
Gibson confessed to using a miner's hammer to kill them during a robbery.
Oh my gosh.
But initially, the authorities thought there were two suspects, and there were even conflicting descriptions about their skin tones.
That's a significant discrepancy. Were these conflicting descriptions ever reconciled? And what about the murder weapon?
Yeah.
Was it ever recovered, and was there any physical evidence linking it to Gibson?
It really makes you wonder how thorough the investigations were back then.
Yeah.
And then there's the murder of Roy Trapp, a rancher in California.
Oh.
This is the one that ultimately landed Gibson behind bars.
Ah, so this case must have had some compelling evidence to lead to his arrest.
A telegraph operator recognized Gibson from newspaper descriptions and tipped off the police.
Wow.
Imagine that, a chance encounter leading to the downfall of an alleged serial killer.
It's a reminder of how seemingly unconnected events can have a profound impact on the course of justice.
Yeah.
It also highlights the power of media and public awareness in criminal investigations, even in the early 20th century.
Right. After his arrest, Gibson refused to talk at first. But then all of a sudden he confessed to the Trapp murder.
He confessed.
His trial was incredibly fast, only 3 hours long.
3 hours.
And then he's sentenced to death.
A 3-hour trial for a murder charge seems remarkably swift, especially considering the potential for a death sentence.
Right.
This raises questions about the legal processes of the time and whether the emphasis was more on expediency than ensuring a fair trial.
Even back then, people had doubts about his guilt.
Really?
Some things just didn't add up. Like, his fingerprints didn't match those found at the Earhart murder scene.
And we can't forget the reports of 2 suspects with lighter skin tones in the Earhart case.
Yeah.
These conflicting pieces of evidence, particularly the fingerprints, deserve closer examination.
Right.
How were fingerprints collected and analyzed back then? Were those methods reliable?
Yeah.
And were these discrepancies ever addressed?
These are all great questions. There was even a group called the Housewives Union that petitioned for clemency.
The Housewives Union, interesting.
They argued that another murderer who'd committed similar crimes only got life in prison.
Interesting. Their argument touches on a crucial aspect of criminal justice.
Yeah.
The consistent and equitable application of punishment.
Right.
Were there concerns about potential inconsistencies in sentencing ever acknowledged by the authorities?
Sadly, their efforts didn't work, and Mose Gibson was hanged at San Quentin Prison in 1920.
He was hanged.
But even though he was executed, a lot of folks still question his guilt.
Oh, wow.
In fact, he was never even officially charged with the Earhart murders, even though he confessed to them.
This is quite a paradox. It leaves us with a lingering question.
Yeah.
Did he actually commit all the crimes he confessed to?
It's a true crime enigma that's continued to fascinate people for over a century.
Let's delve deeper into some of these specific cases and see if we can unpack this puzzle a bit further. What other details do we have about the murders Gibson confessed to? It's like we're trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces and no picture on the box to guide us.
A true crime jigsaw puzzle. But even with those missing pieces, we have this picture emerging of a life steeped in crime. It's amazing to think about the sheer number of burglaries and robberies he allegedly pulled off. It makes you wonder what could have led him down this path, especially with all the conflicting stories about his past.
The question of nature versus nurture, whether his alleged crimes were a product of his environment or something innate, is certainly a compelling one. It's impossible to say for sure, but exploring the psychological factors that might have contributed to his alleged actions could be illuminating.
Right. And think about the mindset of someone who could pull off so many crimes. Was it just about survival, or is there something darker at play?
The sources mention he was known to be quite charming and charismatic,
Oh, really?
which might have helped him gain people's trust only to betray it later. That kind of duality is often seen in individuals who engage in criminal behavior. It's a fascinating psychological puzzle.
It really is. Let's talk about some of the other murders Gibson confessed to. There's mention of a sugar mill watchman killed in Gramercy, Louisiana in 1910, and then a storekeeper and wagoner killed in the same state around the same time.
These cases unfortunately seem to have fewer details available, which adds to the overall mystery. It begs the question, were these crimes committed by the same man who allegedly killed the Earharts and Roy Trapp? Or are we dealing with multiple perpetrators with similar methods operating in the same area?
It's like trying to untangle a web with multiple threads leading in different directions. And then there are the deaths of Susan B. Clark and Laura Marshall in Florida. Gibson admitted to killing a woman in Orange City, Florida in November 1919. Authorities thought it might have been Susan B. Clark, a widow, who died on November 1st.
That's intriguing. The sources also mention another woman who was robbed on the same night,
Oh, rip.
but her identity remains unknown. This raises the possibility that Gibson might have been involved in both incidents, or perhaps it was just a tragic coincidence.
Exactly. Was it Gibson or was it someone else? And what about Laura Marshall? Her name is connected to this case somehow, but the sources don't give us any more information about her. It's a frustrating dead end.
It's a reminder that even with meticulous research and investigation, some mysteries might never be fully solved. We're left with these tantalizing fragments of information, and it's up to us to try to piece them together as best we can.
It's frustrating, but also fascinating, wouldn't you say? We want closure, but the lack of concrete answers forces us to think critically and come up with our own interpretations.
Precisely. And in that sense, Mose Gibson's story isn't just a historical account. It's an invitation to engage with the past, to grapple with its complexities, and to accept that sometimes the truth remains elusive.
So what does all this mean for you, our listener? We've presented the facts, the inconsistencies, the unanswered questions swirling around Mose Gibson's life and alleged crimes. Now it's your turn to put on your detective hat and weigh the evidence. Was Mose Gibson a cold-blooded serial killer, or was he a victim of circumstance wrongly accused?
Consider the context of the time. We're talking about the early 1900s, an era marked by significant racial prejudice and systemic biases within the justice system. These factors might have influenced the investigations and legal proceedings in ways we can only speculate about now.
That's a great point. It makes you wonder if there are other cases from that time period where the truth remains hidden.
This prompts us to consider how we as a society grapple with a past where justice wasn't always served, particularly for marginalized communities.
These are definitely important conversations to have as we learn from history and strive for a more equitable future. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with one final thought, something to ponder as you delve further into this case. What if, in some of these cases, Mose Gibson wasn't actually the killer?
That's a chilling possibility. If true, it means the real perpetrators might have escaped justice, their crimes forever shrouded in mystery.
And it opens up a whole new world of questions. Were there other unsolved mysteries, other victims connected to this story that we might never know about?
It's a sobering thought. The past often holds secrets that may never be fully revealed.
Well, it seems like we've only scratched the surface of this complex and captivating case. We encourage you to explore further, to delve into the sources, especially the details of the Earhart murders and those mysterious Florida deaths. You might just stumble upon a piece of the puzzle that we missed.
Remember, history is a tapestry woven from countless threads, and it's up to each of us to keep pulling on those threads, to keep questioning, and to keep seeking a deeper understanding of the past.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey into the heart of a true crime enigma. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. It really makes you think, huh?
It does.
Like we said before, history isn't always neat and tidy.
Right.
There are so many unanswered questions, and sometimes all we can do is speculate and try to make sense of the limited information we have.
Exactly. And that's where critical thinking comes in.
Yeah.
We have to look beyond the surface, examine the evidence, and consider all the different angles.
We talked about the inconsistencies in the conflicting accounts of Jason's life.
Right.
And the possibility that other perpetrators might have been involved in some of these crimes.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if we'll ever truly know the whole story.
Perhaps not. But that doesn't diminish the importance of continuing to explore these historical cases.
Right.
Each new detail we uncover, every question we raise, brings us closer to understanding not just the past, but also the complexities of human nature.
This case in particular raises questions about how society viewed and treated individuals accused of crimes back then. We've touched on the potential biases in the justice system.
Yeah.
And how those biases might have influenced the way investigations were conducted and trials were carried out.
We can't ignore those historical realities. Examining those systemic issues allows us to have a more nuanced understanding of not just Mose Gibson's story, but of countless other cases that might have been impacted by similar prejudices.
It's a reminder that justice isn't always blind, and that we need to be aware of those historical blind spots as we strive to create a fairer and more equitable society.
Absolutely. Awareness is the first step towards positive change. And by engaging with these complex historical narratives, we contribute to that process of understanding and challenging the injustices of the past.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the enigmatic case of Mose Gibson, we encourage you to keep digging. Explore those lingering questions, examine the sources we've discussed, and see what conclusions you reach. Perhaps you'll uncover something we missed, a detail that sheds new light on this captivating true crime mystery.
Remember, history is a tapestry woven from countless threads, And it's up to each of us to keep pulling on those threads, to keep questioning, and to keep seeking a deeper understanding of the past.
Well, that's going to do it for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey into the heart of a true crime enigma. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.